Well, hello there. Well, today I thought that I would take a little break from ye old murderer's row and talk about a halfway recent film that kind of piqued my interest, and I decided to check it out, called Under the Silver Lake from 2018. And yeah, not necessarily in my wheelhouse. This was directed by David Robert Mitchell, the guy who gave us It Follows, and stars Andrew Garfield uh, as the lead character Sam, and a host of other people. And I don't especially feel the need to go into any of those names. Mostly there are some small names. I don't know, just kind of looked under there. David Yao from the Jesus Lizard as the homeless king. Man, I'm always glad to see some David Yao anywhere, man. But anyway, that notwithstanding, on the Silver Globe, on I keep wanting to call it On the Silver Globe, and I need to get to On the Silver Globe. I need to get to Zulawski in general. But, just that guy is, if we're talking Murderer's Row, that guy is absolutely one of the greatest filmmakers ever. And, but we'll get to that at some point. Um, Under the Silver Lake, this story is almost kind of like, I would almost say it's like a neo noir, but it's kind of like a postmodern neo noir on acid or something. And you'll say, yeah, yeah, a bunch of those exist already, Chuck. And yeah, you may be right. Yeah, the pretty much. Yeah, another one I need to put a pin in is of course Chinatown, which is pretty much the neo noir that all the other neo noirs are stacked up against, and there are reasons for that. But Under the Silver Lake, oh boy, yeah, it's a long, strange trip, and yeah, it's long. It's damn near 2.5 hours. That's like the length of a damn Star Wars movie. But regardless, okay, so Andrew Garfield plays Sam, and he's living in an apartment in LA, and just, he's surrounded by all the stuff that gives him comfort, the video games, the Kurt Cobain poster on the wall. He's, of that ilk. A shiftless young man who is constantly behind on his rent, on the verge of getting evicted, and has no discernible job happening. And he just kind of lazes around on the porch, plays his guitar. He'll get these calls from his mom, who's living somewhere else, and his mom is always obsessing over these old movies and these old stars. And at one point, there's kind of a mini subplot about Janet Gaynor as being one of the actresses that his mom is absolutely obsessed with, to the point where she goes and tapes something on VHS and mails it to him. You got to watch this. And so interesting. So, very pop culture referential. And this guy, Sam, he's basically, I guess, what would be your definition of a 2010s slacker, or whatever passed for a slacker at that point. And he, and I mean, I have an affectation for shiftless characters, or rootless characters who maybe don't know where they're going. And a character like that can get embroiled in a lot of fun. This character gets embroiled in a mystery he never imagined getting embroiled in, where, he's this kid, he kind of lives a very solitary life, but he goes around kind of kind of low-key peeping Tomming on his neighbors. A lot of whom basically seem to kind of understand what he's doing, and they kind of let it go. He has an actress friend who comes over and, talks about the roles she's auditioning for, and they end up banging, for basically a lonely guy gets more ass than a toilet seat. I think he clocks like 3 women inside the movie, 3 or 4. I don't know. It's which back in my younger days when I thought about being lonely, that was not what I was thinking. I was like, I just don't get anything. But, he's Andrew Garfield, dude. Yeah, he can, never mind. Anyway, so this guy's kind of drifting along, just kind of barely keeping his apartment open. And he happens upon this pretty girl who's living down maybe elsewhere in the apartment buildings or in one of the apartments, and he becomes fairly attracted to her and decides to go look her up. And so they go in and they hang out, and I don't think there's any consummation, but he gets high with her and he really enjoys himself, and they're like on the verge of kind of maybe getting into a heavy makeout session when her roommates come busting in, and they've all got some kind of thing going, and they're yakking and doing all this other stuff, and he just kind of leaves. It's like, I'll check you later. And so later on, he goes back and he goes to her apartment, and it's empty, vacated. It's like no one is there. So it's like no, they just up and moved out in the undercover of the night, and so this movie turns into this mad tangled maze where Sam is looking for this girl, trying to figure out what happened to this girl, and it turns into a wild, twisted plot, and goes dipping into all these threads of underground comics and weird little cults where these rich millionaire so-and-sos are all getting buried and entombed in the ground with 3 brides like the pharaohs of Egypt. And then there's like these underground comics with this underground comics creator who's got all these conspiracy theories, and he's all Pepe Sylvia up there with all his different threads posted on the wall and whatnot. And, he thinks they're watching him, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And then there are all these parties and all these call girls or escorts who keep going to these parties, and it's just where the rich, posh people get together, and they all know so-and-so, and they're all hobnobbing, and these cults keep coming up. Just this band who are seemingly one of those cults, and this mysterious old man who lives up in the hills, and he's the guy who wrote all the pop songs you ever heard. And he's been doing it for decades, and he's rich, and he's callous, and he's laughing at everybody. And all the songs you rebelled to when you were a teenager, I wrote those right here on this piano. And then you got, and then there's a dog killer roaming around. You see a dead dog in a dream, I think. You never actually see a dog killer at work. except you get the kind of vague suspicion that maybe Andrew Garfield might be the dog killer, but you're never really sure. Feels like an important clue, but it's probably not. Yeah, it's that kind of movie, and very steeped in kind of noirish mystery and tangled webs and conspiracy theories, and which I'm sure which would be attractive to a certain segment of our populace. As far as conspiracy theories go, I mean, I disbelieve 95% of them. Uh, I tend to be very skeptical. I would go as far as say I hate them, and the reason I hate them is I feel like they poison the discourse, usually with a lot of nonsense. I didn't always feel that way. I mean, I when back in the 80s and 90s, I was kind of really, kind of had a bunch of friends who were kind of checking them out. I was kind of into them. So, who did kill JFK and a lot of that type of stuff. And I was like, wow, ooh, that's really fascinating. And after a while, it turns into like the spooky stories you tell around the campfire, and y'all sit around with your friends getting lit and kind of being like, wow, that's really cool. Yeah, it's probably a bunch of bullshit, right? Yeah. Or is it? And that, which, on its own level is all well and good until, it erupts into complete stupidity. And, I was a 9/11 truther for a hot minute. For a hot 5 minutes, I was a 9/11 truther. True confessions. What took me out of it and what helped me, gave me more critical thinking, kind of skeptical brain about these things was being all militant. I know they were planning the 9/11 stuff, and the government were planning on doing this, and they wanted to abrogate civil liberties, etc. Which, and they did abrogate civil liberties big time, folks. Yeah, we're all accustomed to living with like Homeland Security Act, Patriot Act, and all that. That shit didn't used to exist, and we didn't need it. We still don't need it. But my own aside, they said, listen, your concerns are valid and your concerns are right, but you don't have to get wrapped up in these insane stories where, there's this big far-reaching government plot, which, if it were to succeed, you couldn't keep a secret that involves so many thousands of people. Yeah, because you can't keep a secret among 3 or 4 people. So, fair point. And you don't have to go, you can see the bad side of anything and see exactly how something's going to go bad and how something's gone wrong and how maybe there is an abuse of authority without falling into telling all these damn stories and making up all these stupid fairy tales about the pizza joint with the non-existent basement, or the government plot to instigate this and that, and so now there are real conspiracies. If you look up MK Ultra, man, that's been completely declassified at this point. You could go look at that. You look at a lot of stuff. Gulf of Tonkin report, yeah, a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, but when it gets completely mental, it's just completely mental until it's not. FC files. Sorry, guys. I don't know. I think I got a frog in my throat or something. Try to get that out. But regardless, I'm not a big believer in any of that shit. So there was a little bit of a hill for me to climb up. At the end of the day, it's like, yeah, well, what do you draw from this? How much of your identity is yours? How much of the songs that made up your life, the movies that you quote, the songs that made up your life, the video games that you're always referencing, how much of your identity is you, and how much your identity is what you consume. How much of your perception of what a relationship is supposed to be is based on pop songs somebody wrote. It just bears thinking about. And I just, we're as guilty of that as anyone. I mean, I sit here and I talk about movies, but there's that. And how much of these deep interwoven conspiracies that go on in life? It's obvious to look at, under the Silver Lake and realize that it's, at least to one degree or another, satirical. And, you've got the hobo signs and the homeless king who will take you to the secret bomb shelter and whatever else. And, yeah, it's pretty damn silly. But at the same time, how much of these things, how much of this can be attributed to, like, actual cults and deep down conspiracies? They're insidious. They're trying to do this. They're trying to do that. Well, just powerful people and powerful institutions, that we've really given over our lives to, have kind of rigged the world to work in a certain way. And we've been doing it for generations. We've had this going for generations. And, I'm a big fan of systemic analysis and critical of systems. Generally speaking, systems that work a certain way, you walk up to this machine, you press that button, you know what that machine's going to do. And that's a lot of what you're looking at, and that's a lot of what you see in the world. And I think the movie gets that. And I think that's really the big machine at work here. Hang on, I've got a kitty who wants to go see his mama. Okay, Presto, there you go. And it's kind of nice, and of course, a lot of this stuff is very hyperbolic and very satirical, like I said. But at the end of the day, yeah. And at the end of the day, he kind of goes home dealing, as many noir characters do, with these kind of this big world and this big machine and these big cults and this big problem that it's bad, but at the end of the day, he can walk away from it and it won't hurt him any to do so. In fact, it'll probably benefit him in the long run. And he's able to, in a weird way, his life isn't a bed of roses, but at the same time, he's able to kind of pick things up, reassess, and kind of latch onto some new thing, and kind of maybe move on and subsist and potentially grow and have a pretty good life for himself in some way, form, or fashion. So, yeah, despite all the harping I'm doing, this is a pretty good little movie, and it's well worth checking out. Anyway, bam, there you go. Hope y'all are having a good one, and take care of yourselves. And wait. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, if you like these videos, hit that thumbs up. Let me know you like them, or you can let me know you don't like them. I'd rather you don't, but it's a free country, and I'd rather you just hold on to your integrity. But do that. I want you to subscribe because I like me some subscribers. If you like what I'm doing, whatever, click that little bell for notifications. That way you know when I put up a new video. Got new stuff on the horizon. It's coming up all the time. Got all kinds of different little side projects. Got art. You always see my little painting videos and whatnot. You can watch some of my other more outre productions. I got a lot of those on here, and they're still popping up. They're going to be changing substantially real soon, but yeah, that's a thing. And I want to say on top of that, it's just I hope you're all doing well, and hope the world is treating you good. Oh yeah, write down in that comment section. Yeah. You can tell I'm not particularly good at this, but anyway, yeah. Hope I see you further on down the trail.